Greetings, everyone. On behalf of City of Bismarck, welcome to the 43rd Avenue Northeast Reconstruction Virtual Public Input Meeting. My name is Carl Jackson. I am KLJ's project manager and will be presenting the alternatives and options that have been developed for 43rd Avenue Northeast between State Street and North 26th Street. We look forward to your feedback regarding this project to ensure that the preferred alternative is carried forward into final design and construction. The intent of this meeting is to inform the public of the project, explain the alternatives and options that have been developed, and then solicit your input. More information will be provided at the end for submitting questions and comments. So here you see the project location. 43rd Avenue is an east-west corridor in northern Bismarck. This project proposes reconstructing 43rd Avenue from State Street through the 26th Street intersection, as well as a portion of 19th Street North from 43rd Avenue to North Valley Loop. This project is a continuation of the improvements to 43rd Avenue to the west of State Street that took place just this last summer. The project includes reconstructing the existing rural roadway section that uses ditches to convey stormwater drainage to an urban section with curb and gutter, storm sewer, new water main, some sanitary sewer, street lighting, landscaping, and pedestrian facilities. Throughout the presentation, I will be discussing locations and options for different lane configurations, intersection types, access, and frontage road locations. The east end of the project will tie into a separate roadway improvement project that Burleigh County is currently leading. 43rd Avenue from North 26th Street to Roosevelt Drive will be bid in the spring and constructed in the summer of 2021. Now to talk about the need for the project. Social and economic demands, safety, and roadway deficiencies are the main drivers. These issues relate to traffic operations, mobility, and network connectivity throughout the corridor. There are several new developments adjacent to and surrounding the corridor that require upgraded infrastructure to continue to thrive. The current roadway only accommodates a single lane of traffic in each direction. Along with increased development comes increased traffic. The proposed road will increase traffic capacity and improve safety with the addition of turning lanes, intersection controls, street lighting, and pedestrian facilities. We want to be sure to communicate a little bit about the project vision here. The project will tie into the previously constructed 4-lane road west of State Street and the proposed 3-lane road east of 26th Street that Burleigh County is scheduled to build in 2021. The forecasted traffic volumes on the east side of this project are about 2/3 of the anticipated future traffic volumes on the west side. From west to east through this corridor, the adjacent land use also transitions from commercial to residential. So a project objective is to determine the vision of a corridor and how that transition will actually take place. There are options that will determine where the roadway will transition from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. These options will be explained in detail later on. The corridor vision, which includes things like number of lanes, intersection types, pedestrian features. It defines and balances the relationship between efficiency and livability as this transition occurs. There are two primary alternatives proposed for this project. First is a build alternative, and then also a no-build alternative. The no-build would leave the corridor as it is today without any proposed improvements. The build alternative would reconstruct and urbanize the corridor. Accompanying the build alternative are several different sub-options to be considered. In the next several slides, I will discuss the proposed improvements and options in detail to help provide a full understanding of the project. This graphic depicts a typical section of a 4-lane road. This typical section includes 2 lanes in each direction, a raised median, a shared use path on the south side of the road, and a sidewalk on the north side. For reference, this would be basically the same roadway configuration as the 43rd Avenue project constructed this past summer between Washington Street and State, but with the shared use path transitioning to the south side of the road. This is due to increased pedestrian infrastructure and potential connectivity on the south side of the corridor. Pedestrian crossings and a new traffic signal would be installed at the State Street intersection to facilitate this transition from the north to the south for pedestrians. In this graphic, we're showing a typical section for a 3-lane roadway. The typical section includes 1 lane in each direction, a raised median, a shared use path on the south side, and a sidewalk on the north. You'll note that the additional shoulder is included with this typical section. That's intended to provide a refuge for maintenance or stalled vehicles, as well as providing additional area for snow storage in the winter. Over the next several slides, we will step through the proposed options as seen from plan view. As I mentioned, this project is a continuation of the reconstruction that just took place this past summer in 2020. Beginning at the very east end of that project, the State Street intersection, this new proposed road will start with a 4-lane section as shown on this concept drawing. There will be a new traffic signal installed at State that will accommodate east-west pedestrian crossings on the north and south side of the intersection. At the intersection of State and 43rd, double left turn lanes will be striped for southbound motorists turning from State Street left onto 43rd Avenue heading east. The shared use path on the north side of 43rd Avenue west of State will cross from the north to the south at this intersection. Then a sidewalk will be constructed on the north side of the new proposed road heading east. This project will also address the access to the State Street frontage road. The first option, as you see at the top of your screen, would leave the access to the frontage road in the current location. The existing full access intersection to the frontage road would be converted into a right-in, right-out, however. This access revision is necessary due to its proximity to the State Street intersection. The current frontage road intersection with 43rd is only about 180 feet from the State Street intersection, and it's at a fairly steep grade. So an alternative is to realign the frontage road to the east and create a connection with 43rd via 15th Street. The realigned frontage road could potentially intersect 43rd with either a full access or 3/4 access intersection. However, it should be noted that this option increases construction costs and requires purchasing additional right-of-way. Okay, this slide shows the stretch between North 15th Street and North 19th Street. East of North 15th Street, options for 2 corridor widths are being considered. These are derived from the typical sections presented earlier in this presentation. The first option continues 4 lanes east to the 19th Street intersection. The road would be divided with a raised median from State to 19th. Then a 3-lane road would continue east from 19th to the end of the project at 26th. One of the benefits of this option is the additional westbound lane acts as a climbing lane for large vehicles upon departing the North 19th Street intersection. The second option, shown at the bottom, transitions from 4 lanes to 3 lanes actually on the west side of the 15th Street intersection. This section would include a raised median then from 15th to the 19th Street intersection. Again, to reiterate the intent for both options, 43rd Avenue would ultimately be a 3-lane road east of 19th all the way to the end. So this slide is depicting 2 different options for the stretch from 19th to the railroad crossing. These options are based on the chosen intersection configuration at 19th and 43rd, which we will discuss shortly. 43rd Avenue will either have a raised median, similar to the option west of 19th, or it'll be a flush 3-lane roadway similar to East Divide Avenue from 26th to the Bismarck Expressway if you've driven that stretch of road. A key difference between these options is access to the River of Hope Church and daycare. If a flush median is selected, the current church access is proposed to be shifted east to allow adequate storage for the westbound left turn onto North 19th. This configuration would maintain full access to and from 43rd. If a raised median is installed, similar to what's shown on the bottom part of your screen, the access would be converted into a 3/4 access. The 3/4 access would allow right and left turning traffic to enter the parking lot from 43rd, but restrict the exiting traffic from the parking lot to a right turn only. Drivers intending to travel east would need to utilize the proposed roundabout to turn around. Further east from 19th is the railroad crossing. As part of this project, the crossing will be improved as part of the primary build alternative. The crossing will remain a concrete at-grade rail crossing with larger crossing arms and pedestrian crossing facilities on each side. A grade-separated crossing was considered, but we determined that wasn't going to be cost-effective, mainly due to the terrain in the area and also the fact that there is a low volume of rail traffic. Now we're looking at North 19th Street, just south of 43rd Avenue. So the view has rotated 90 degrees on your screen. 2 options have been developed for this stretch of North 19th. Similar to 43rd Avenue, these options are based on the intersection type that will eventually be selected at the 19th and 43rd intersection. Currently, 19th is a two-lane rural section from North Valley Loop to 43rd Avenue. At the existing intersection of 43rd Avenue, the southern approach of 19th is offset approximately 20 feet to the west of the northern approach. Depending on the intersection type selected, 19th Street may have to be realigned to line up with the northern approach. Regardless of the intersection type, North 19th Street will be reconstructed from 43rd to North Valley Loop as a 37-foot road with curb, gutter, and storm sewer. A sidewalk will also be constructed along the west side of the roadway, as shown in the exhibit on screen. Also, the existing culvert under North 19th Street is proposed to be replaced with a box culvert to better facilitate drainage. All right, so now we'll focus our attention on the 19th Street intersection traffic control. The graphic on your screen is showing a couple of different concepts as you're looking north here. On the left side of the concepts, you'll see some bullets that are unique to the 43rd and 19th intersection, and it's why we want to pay a little bit closer attention to this location. One option here is a roundabout intersection. This would be constructed with a 130-foot inscribed circle diameter. The roundabout would be centered in the intersection and would not require realigning the 19th Street south leg here, as I mentioned earlier. The roundabout provides a capacity benefit and added safety benefits by reducing conflict points and reducing the severity of crashes. The roundabout intersection would include a continuation of that raised median heading to the east of the intersection as well. Another option is a signalized intersection. This would construct a standard intersection layout with signals. However, it would require realigning that south leg to better align the north and south approaches to the signalized intersection. The signalized intersection has the advantage of better adaptability if traffic numbers grow beyond current traffic projections, and it's consistent with the corridor west of State Street as well. However, this option would require more right-of-way acquisition and greater wetland impacts. The next few slides just show the same intersection with a couple of different perspectives. This slide is an aerial photo of the existing intersection looking north. And here, again, you'll notice the offset and the skew that I've been mentioning. That offset actually blends pretty well with the roundabout at this intersection. Again, roundabouts naturally slow speeds in the whole corridor, and with those slower speeds comes reduced risk and reduced severity of crashes. Roundabout crashes are generally merge and diverge type crashes, where signalized intersections tend to be more crossing type crashes. Another note is that roundabouts have about 25% of the potential conflict points of a signalized intersection by comparison. Although the roundabout does not have protected pedestrian crossings, it does reduce the number of lanes pedestrians have to cross at a given time. This gives pedestrians time to focus only on one lane at a time when crossing. And here we're showing the signalized intersection concept. Again, the signalized intersection at 19th and 43rd would match the corridor to the west of State Street that was done last year. A signalized intersection will allow for protected pedestrian crossings, although the pedestrians would cross a longer portion of the road at one time. The signal will also adapt to increased traffic over time. Again, this option would require realigning 19th Street on the south approach so that the north and south legs would line up across from each other. And that increases the amount of right-of-way acquisition and the degree of wetland impacts. Okay, and now we are moving east in the area of the 26th Street intersection. The graphic on your screen is showing three different options for this intersection. The first, that's shown in the top pane, would reconstruct the intersection in its current location. This option would function adequately as a two-way stop-controlled intersection. However, if a signal was ever needed, the steep grade of 43rd would now allow pedestrian crossings to meet standards required by the Americans with Disabilities Act. These requirements restrict the cross slope of a protected crossing. If a signal was installed at the existing location, cross slopes would be 2 to 3 times greater than what's allowable. The steep grades also present a safety concern when vehicles are trying to stop at a red light during winter driving conditions. So then when you look at the two panes in the lower right, the next two options shift the intersection to a flatter point along 43rd Avenue uphill and to the east. At this location, two options have been identified, a roundabout and a signal. By shifting the intersection east, the intersection location would meet ADA requirements if a signal is ever warranted in the future. And then it's worth noting that the roundabout option would allow more effective intersection control today to be installed with the current project, as opposed to waiting for traffic volumes to increase in the future and only then require a signal, if required. And there's an inset picture on the lower left of your pane. We thought we'd address that as well. If the intersection at 26th is shifted to the east, sight distance will be improved. So this will increase sight distance for southbound traffic turning left, and that's an improvement from what's experienced today at 26th Street. Because of the improved sight distance with this shift, we would then propose to reduce the intersection at Point Loop to a 3/4 access. The access reduction is based on City of Bismarck's access management policy. The policy permits no more than 5 access points per mile on each side of a principal arterial. And the policy prescribes a minimum spacing of a 1/4 mile between high density or commercial access points. It's worth mentioning that along with surface improvements along the corridor, this project will include significant municipal utility improvements. The new water main continues the city's implementation of its master plan. The primary component is extending a 24-inch transmission pipeline from State Street to near the intersection of 26th, along with valving to enable pressure zones 2 and 3 interconnection options. The existing road conveys stormwater via roadside ditches right now, so the proposed project would incorporate curb and gutter along with new storm sewer that will outfall into Hay Creek. Box culverts will be installed at the low end of 19th and at the Hay Creek crossing of 43rd Avenue, which also will require a floodplain analysis of the surrounding areas. Finally, a small portion of sanitary sewer will be built that's extending along 19th to the south. The next couple of slides are going to address construction phasing. So you can see red is indicating where we anticipate work occurring and yellow where we anticipate detours. Due to the terrain and proposed improvements, closing the roadway during reconstruction and doing this in phases is really the only cost-effective approach to getting it built. The project is proposed to be done in 3 phases. 2 phases will accomplish the 43rd Avenue construction, and then the 3rd phase will be for 19th Street. Phase 1, that's shown on your screen here, would close 43rd Avenue from 19th to 26th and then reconstruct that portion of road and utilities. Traffic would be detoured onto Centennial Road, Century Avenue, and 19th Street during this closure. Access to the Point subdivision would be maintained at North 26th during this closure. In here we're showing phase 2 of construction, again in red. Phase 2 closes 43rd from State Street to 19th Street for reconstruction. Access to all the properties within the closure will be maintained by way of temporary accesses. And during the 43rd Avenue closure for phase 2, traffic would be detoured onto 19th, Skyline, and then State Street. As I mentioned, phase 3 is 19th. So the 3rd phase will close 19th just south of North Valley Loop, and it will be closed up to 43rd Avenue. Chandler Lane and North Valley Loop will access North 19th via the southern approach of North Valley Loop, and access to Yucca Lane will be maintained as temporary during the closure. Traffic would be detoured onto Calgary, State Street, and 43rd Avenue. Because the project will utilize federal aid funding, impacts for each alternative have to be determined and an environmental document prepared explaining all alternatives and options, outlining the environmental impacts for each one. These impacts include items such as wetlands, cultural, threatened and endangered species, and noise considerations. Depending on the options, the wetland impacts range from about 1.16 to 1.19 acres of permanent impacts. There are 2 options to mitigate wetlands impacted due to this project, either on-site mitigation or purchasing wetland credits. It's the intent of this project to mitigate wetland impacts on-site. Right-of-way acquisition ranges from 2.1 acres to 3.7 acres, depending on which roadway configuration is selected. And then temporary easements are estimated to range from about 6 to 8 acres, depending on the alternatives again. Following an evaluation, the proposed project was determined to meet the definition of a Type 1 project, thereby requiring a traffic noise analysis. Existing and projected future traffic noise levels were modeled to determine the potential increase in noise levels as a result of each alternative. The traffic noise model used a worst-case scenario methodology whereby the build alternative and options anticipated to result in the highest traffic noise levels were modeled. For this project, the primary build alternative was modeled with varying intersection options, primarily roundabouts, and this occurred between State and 26th. It was determined that none of the receptors along the project corridor would be impacted by the build alternative or any of the other options analyzed. Therefore, traffic noise abatement was not considered for this project. We also wanted to provide some financial information during this presentation. In total, the project is estimated to cost between $20 and $22 million. These costs include roadway and utility construction, right-of-way acquisition, utility relocations, professional services, and then we also have some contingency built into these estimates. To assist in project costs, the City of Bismarck can utilize up to $4.8 million of federal aid funding distributed by North Dakota Department of Transportation. That $4.8 million is not available until 2024, so the city will pay that portion of the project in advance and then receive reimbursement in 2024. After the federal share, this leaves a balance of $15.2 to $17.2 million that needs to be paid by the City of Bismarck. The project is eligible for funding through the half-cent sales tax program, but we wanted to make sure to note that final decisions regarding project funding are pending. Here's a graphic showing the project schedule. The project began in July of 2020. Since that time, we've been working on preliminary design of the alternatives and evaluating options to determine impacts for each one. As mentioned, this is all part of the environmental document that is getting completed. As you can see by the schedule, we are on pace for the public input meeting presentation here, and we will incorporate the feedback received from this presentation into the alternatives. The next step is to present the alternatives discussed to the Bismarck City Commission. We anticipate that occurring in February. At that point, the Commission will decide what alternative and options should be carried forward into final design. Upon decisions from the City Commission, the environmental document can be finalized. There's a joint effort between the City, North Dakota DOT, and KLJ to work on the environmental document. We are targeted to have an approved environmental document by the end of February this year. Once that has been finalized, the project can proceed into final design stages. This stage of the project is anticipated to be completed by August of this year. During that time, our designers will prepare final plans and specifications for contractors to bid. We'll also be working with landowners on right-of-way acquisition, utility relocations, and submitting any necessary permit applications. The project is currently scheduled for a November 2021 bid opening, with construction starting and taking place in 2022. Again, as we note in the bottom, the schedule outlined on this slide is subject to available funding and advancing construction of the improvements prior to the $4.8 million in federal aid being available in 2024. Okay, to summarize this presentation, we want to note that final decisions are pending, and we do appreciate your input. We've developed multiple alternatives and options along 43rd Avenue, again from State Street to North 26th Street. These options range from different intersection treatments to various lane configurations. Prior to finalizing any alternatives and presenting to the City Commission, we do welcome your feedback. Please let us know if you have any questions, comments, or other input regarding the project by emailing me at the address shown on your screen, or you can also submit comments through the city's website also shown on the screen. Hard copies of this presentation and other materials found on the project website will be made available for viewing at KLJ's offices. Those will be held here until January 22nd, so feel free to contact me directly with those requests. We do require that all comments be received by January 22nd so that we have time to incorporate all of the feedback into the City Commission presentation. After you've finished watching this presentation, we are asking viewers to voluntarily take part in a public participation survey. This is a confidential form that is used by the Federal Highway Administration and North Dakota Department of Transportation to ensure that all demographics are served during the public input process. Again, participation in this survey is not required and your name is not asked on the form. To take part in the survey, just please click on the link shown on the project website. So this concludes the virtual public input meeting. We would like to thank you. We sure appreciate you taking time to watch this presentation. and for staying involved in the public input process. Please contact us via email or through the website with any comments, questions, or other input you have, and we do hope you have a great day.